I'm really excited to be here today with one of our greatest portfolio company CEOs, Charley Dehoney from Upwell. Charley, thanks for coming and spending some time with me today.
There's nowhere else I'd rather be. Thanks for having me.
Very cool. So what we're going to do today is kind of dig into your founder story, and then I also want to spend some time talking about how you've commercialized your vision at Upwell. And this is part of a series that we're doing at MVP Capital. It's like a founder series that we call Between Two Quarters. And the idea is to sort of uncover some of the challenges of selling enterprise software. And we're talking to both founders and we're also talking to buyers of enterprise software at large corporations. It's one of the things that we sort of bring to the table with the MVP Galaxy, which is a network of about 35 corporate investors, as you know.
Yeah, I love it.
Very cool. So starting out, talk to me about your founder story. What got you to where you are today? What was the inception point?
Well, I have a hard time telling a short version of this, but for the sake of your audience, I'll condense it down. But my journey goes back 22 years in supply chain and logistics. I started off going door to door selling overnight shipping. So being on the front lines of customer acquisition and customer retention, Worldwide Express really taught me the framework in terms of how to properly find a client, address their needs, onboard that client, retain the client. And so I knew back then that billing was a paramount kind of like fixture in that value chain. And if you can move their cargo all day long, but if you mess up the invoice, you're dealing with a whole different set of problems and a whole different set of personnel. And then after a couple of successful exits early in my career, I was able to get off on my own and started bootstrapping my first logistics business, which was a domestic trucking brokerage. And then I added an international company right next door on the heels of that. So I basically, in my late 20s, early 30s, had a posture of saying yes. If a customer had a problem and they needed to move something from A to B, I would say yes, and I would figure out how to do it on the back end. So early in my career, if it moved, you name it, I've packed it, shipped it, loaded the truck, driven the truck, but most importantly, I've paid the bill. So in my second year as a founder in my first business, my wife left her job after selling software and being very successful. She's much more of a finance brain. So she came into the business and started to paint a picture for me that wasn't really exciting to look at. And it was really around forecasted cash flows. And she was showing me the delta between our accounts payable and our accounts receivable and how quickly our reserves were getting eaten away.
Double click on that. What were the challenges there in the business? Like at that point, you're running a business. It's like a brokerage, right? That's like moving stuff for
so like any marketplace business, every transaction comes with a payable and a receivable, and oftentimes there's multiple payables for every receivable that you're sending out to the invoice to your customer. So the complexity comes when the carrier, the folks moving the cargo, want to get paid upon pickup, delivery, maybe within a net 15, but the shipper, the person who signs the final check, the shipper wants 30, 45, 60 day, if you're hauling liquid, 90-day terms. So the delta between your AP and your AR represents really what your working capital situation needs to be. And so as I saw my working capital, evaporating, we just ran into some really tough times, in those first 3-4 years where my wife would tell me, hey, look, we don't have enough money for payroll coming up at the end of the week. We need, 40 grand, 80 grand, whatever it was. And I would just lose my mind and think to myself, like, how is this possible? We're growing so fast. My customers want to pay me.
Yeah.
And then I'd find myself in these cycles, Dan, where I'd be on the phone with my best customers and I'd say, hey, you're missing 8 invoices. You paid 4 and then you skipped 8 and now you paid the last 6. And they'll say, what invoice? I don't have those invoices. And that one used to just fry me.
Yeah.
Because I would see every time, I would send them a confirmation of a delivery or tell them that, hey, your freight has been delivered on time. They would respond back, got it, thanks, boss. But on their invoice emails, it's like, I have no idea if they got them or not. I had no system of record telling me that they received them and they were ignoring them or whatever the case was. So the other common challenge that I'd run into was these self-inflicted gunshot wounds on the invoice itself, where our team would miss one tiny detail on the invoice. And it's a very well-known detail. Maybe it's a purchase order number, or it's a routing code, or it's some identifier that they need to match back to in their AP approval process. And we didn't give them the identifier. We didn't give them the document. So the same chronic errors were leading to this drain on my cash flow, and ultimately led me to a place where the story that I tell a lot is selling my car one time just to make a payroll on a Thursday afternoon right in front of my brokerage for cash on Craigslist. One of the most demoralizing experiences of my life. And I just went in that night and I was so dejected. My team watched me do it. And I was thinking to myself, like, if my stinking transportation management software just talk to QuickBooks.
Yeah.
And then if they all route to Constant Contact and if something goes past due, like kick them out an email, just bug them like you bug me when I'm buying something from you. I thought that there was something there, but by the grace of God, sold those businesses in 2014 and went on and did a number of venture-backed things and finally turned around a private equity-backed freight brokerage here in Omaha, where I live now. We're not in Omaha, we're in New York. But when I was turning around that brokerage, I was looking for off-the-shelf tools to automate a bunch of the AP and the AR. And I really couldn't find what I was looking for. So we shoehorned a bunch of things together and were thankfully able to sell that business for a really healthy return. And then after that, I went to work for a couple of very large global logistics companies where I saw they were having the exact same payment issues that I was having in my early days. They were having it at a greater scale. But there was a couple of underlying kind of technology trends that were driving
So you spent some time with large enterprises. And so they were really having the same problem that you had as a small business.
That's exactly right.
Wow.
Yeah, and so they were having the same issues, ingesting documents, reconciling payables, making sure that all of the information was accurate and correct. And so the way that these large organizations were solving it was nearshore, BPOs, putting people overseas, sending these documents up into the cloud. And the latency there, the accuracy issues, the time zone, the currency issues. I just saw, big steamship lines, big global freight forwarders, railroads, chassis companies, ports. They were all insourcing this stuff. Wow. They were looking for ways to automate and bring it in-house. And so while I was running a large corporate accelerator for the Steamship Line CMA CGM group, I had access to 12 of their largest trade partners in North America. And these folks were all talking about payments and documents and billing and collections, and nobody was talking about order to cash. And this was in kind of late 21, early 22. So I start looking into the space, and I'm like, Gartner just named this a space. And you got HighRadius and BillTrust and VersaPay and large companies that had exceeded billion-dollar market caps in some instances. But they weren't coming in and talking to the logistics industry. And I knew right away, it's those same identifiers, it's those same references, the same documents that makes it just hard enough to where the large horizontal players would stay away. And so while I'm sitting there tugging at this string about the summertime of 2022, that September, I was at home for a couple of weeks, and it's very rare that I'm at home and I'm not getting up early and going to the gym and doing other things. So after a couple of weeks of kind of just like lethargically moving around the house, in and around my spare time, I said, what's going on? Something's on your mind, what's wrong? And I just didn't want to drag her through the entrepreneurial journey again. I'd done it so many times, and she'd always backed me and bet on me. And we finally had good health care and a nice, healthy salary, and all of our things were taken care of. So I finally just blurted out, and I said, I've got this idea about this company. I think I need to start it. And she's like, well, tell me about it. And I said, it's order to cash for logistics. And I started to walk her through what that was. And having been my business partner and really my better half in the back office, it was obvious to her and it was a no-brainer. So that was, call it, September of 22, October of 22 was the ChatGPT moment.
Yes.
That was okay, now I have to do it. Now, I know it's a problem. I want to solve it. But when ChatGPT came out, it was well, now we have to solve this. Somebody else is going to.
So talk a little bit. So we were talking about that moment in time when all of a sudden things were possible that maybe weren't possible before. Talk about how GenAI made your business possible. And if it wasn't possible before, why not?
Well, I think there was so many different elements of order to cash automation in logistics and supply chain that the topic itself was overwhelming, because really what we're talking about is after freight has been delivered until money is in the bank, there's a whole mess of steps that are manual, and there's a bunch of interdepartmental handoffs that are happening there, and there's multiple systems of records where information is being extracted. And so, it wasn't the integration part that was that worrisome, because APIs are 20 years old now, and that problem's been solved. It wasn't the sort of automation part, because with OCR and RPA there was a lot that could be done, but it was the decisioning and the intellectual part, where how do you get the human out of the loop? And that was really the moment when I'd already decided that I knew there was a business to be made there. I knew I wanted to be part of it, didn't know if I wanted to start it, invest in it, get involved somehow. But then I started reaching out to some CTO, possibilities. Number one guy on my list, thank God he took the call. Thank God his wife let him do it.
Yeah.
And after a couple of conversations, Aaron, my business partner, he was working in a in a med tech AI company, and he was feeling really limited by what he was able to do and implement in using AI in his business. And so as he and I were talking about, getting something off the ground, he got permission from his wife, so we started talking a little more regularly, and then it might have been the same day, Dan. We both tried ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And it was the Model 3, but it was like that was kind of like 1.0 to the
Right.
noob, sorry.
Right.
And so when he and I started one night, we were talking, and I just said, "Have you seen ChatGPT yet?" He was like, "Oh my God, I was going to bring this up to you." And so we started talking about what is possible, and he told me right off the bat, he was like, "Charlie, I guarantee you in a few months, this thing's going to be reading documents and extracting data all in one fell swoop." So when we first built our first document ingestion product, we had to run it through OCR, TextRack. We had to pull the data out. Then we had to, run these prompts, one at a time. And so these actions were taking a really long time. And then each iteration of each large language model, we started kind of using what was best from each of them. And next thing you know, we've got this fully functioning document ingestion engine that's allowing us to categorize and tag and classify financial records and put them where they need to go. And really our secret sauce, what we do different than anybody else in our industry right now, is we've got this massive catalog of rules built into the engine of our platform. So, if there's a major enterprise shipper out there, we've passed them invoices and we've been paid on time, so we know what their auditing standards are.
That's right. That's what a lot of people don't know, that all these big players have a different set of rules.
That's
so you
right.
have to understand, and I mean, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of folks who might be paying you if you don't really, or you're paying them, and you have to understand what their rule
So
situation
there's
looks
tens
like.
of thousands of
Yeah,
these folks
tens of thousands.
that are, our clients are the logistics service provider. That's the trucking company, the freight forwarder, the truck brokerage, the asset owner that needs to get paid from the shipper.
Yeah.
So we're sending invoices to the Nikes, IBMs, Walmarts of the world, all the way down to mom and pops. And as we aggregate this catalog of payment standards, we're able to leverage the large language models to ask unique questions about each individual transaction, not just on the on the payable side to verify the cost to pay the carrier, but more importantly for us, we eat, sleep, and breathe the receivable side. So we use the LLMs to flag invoice exceptions or disputes before that invoice gets presented. So by keeping these invoices out of exception status, we're helping our clients keep millions of dollars in their accounts each month that would otherwise just be sitting up in some AP portal, limbo, waiting for some human to go in there and work on it.
That's great context. And so let's dig in a little bit more to how you commercialized it. And what I find really interesting is like the first customer story. So I remember, first of all, when I met you and Aaron, you were just at the product stage. You didn't have any customers, and you were just talking about like building the thing.
That's
and
right.
you were our first native GenAI investment, like only a few months after the ChatGPT moment. How did you get from the product that you're describing now, the sort of the wire famed first pass of the product to your first customer? What was that journey like?
It was in the summer, but it felt like a long winter for me because I'm the commercial guy. I want to be out there talking to people. And before Aaron and I left our corporate jobs and took your money and decided to give this thing a run, I had talked to 50 plus large enterprises about the problem and what the shell of a solution could look like. So directionally, we had a ton of interest. What we didn't have was that real kind of crystal clear beachhead of this is what we're going to launch with. Now, I'm the optimist, right? And so I've been at this for a long time, and I've helped a lot of companies build and scale. And so I thought to myself, like, I'll build something. It might be kind of shitty, but like I'll get it out there in front of my friends. I can sell it to enough people that are just going to trust me and give it a whirl. And then over time, we'll kind of figure out what that was. What I didn't realize was how much we were going to have to build just to get those people to let us plug it in. Because we have such a vast kind of offering in terms of these 7 workflows that we're kind of helping manage with AI. What I thought was we could build a little bit of every one of them, and somebody will come in and try one. What I realized is we had to kind of build a lot of all of them so that people could see where we are going. Because just because I was saying we're building high radius or bill trust for logistics doesn't mean that anybody else knows what that is.
Right.
So as I'm going in and talking to CFOs of large enterprises in logistics probably know, but the more nascent players, the messy middle, they haven't been called on by these guys. They're not big enough to kind of implement or deploy that kind of stuff. So when we go in there, there's a certain amount of an education cycle that needed to take place. But really, we had very, very close conversations all the way along, and it was something that I was adamant about from day zero. Was if we're going to write a stick of code, we're going to put it in front of somebody, and we're going to take our lumps when we take our lumps, but we're not going to build the Winchester Mystery House, with doors up to the ceiling. We needed to have a concrete, focused offering. So what we really started off with was kind of, the deck of here's what we want to build, the same deck that you saw. And then as we would start talking to each point, we would listen to what not what the end user was saying. Those folks are a little bit too expert in their pain.
Yeah.
Like they're not quite ready to solve almost.
Right.
So what we do is we'd have the user in the room with the president or the CFO, and we would kind of, I'd watch both of them out of like my eye, and sometimes the CFO's like eyes would light up and the user was kind of like blurred.
Yeah.
So where we ended up landing was a couple of distinct products that kind of everybody needed, that we just wanted to go all in on those two products and make those things work. And so when we finally went to market, we had, when I say we went to market, we were in the market showing the product from probably about November of 23, and by about January of 24, I was like, man, we might get a sale next month. Like, this is getting pretty close. So then I get on the phone and we show NFI, the 11th biggest logistics company in North America. We showed them the kind of mock-ups for this integration into their largest AP portals that they were using. Two bank portals, Cass and US Bank, and they're the two largest payers in North America. And so when NFI said, look, if you just finish those integrations and you automate the uploads and the status retrievals for us, that's going to save us 10 hours a day. That's a no-brainer for us. So they signed in February, and then on the heels of that, a small broker in Omaha, Nebraska called Able Transport, and Liz has just been a fantastic mentor and just kind friend in this entire journey. But she said, Charlie, like, I think this is getting good enough, and I want in. Like, I want to be the first one. Plug it into my TMS, get my QuickBooks hooked up, and let's get to work on this. So Liz really gave us, I mean, in hindsight, I can't believe we charged her for the first year. Like, we should have paid her because we just took off.
No, don't. Yeah. That's good. We need we want the revenue.
she wants us to have the revenue too. She's happy for us. But really what we did, Dan, is once we started getting those products in place, we were just kind of standing over their shoulder building, and making sure that things were working. And so 2 months in with NFI, they were having such great results that unsolicited, they made a referral to another large broker in Chicago. And I was like, holy cow, didn't expect that. The same month, that was May of 24, Able had some turnover in their department, and their kind of main guy, employee number one, who ran the entire back office, really good guy. I don't want to say his name, he's a pretty shy guy, but he's still in the business, working somewhere else. But he ended up leaving to go down the street. Got a better offer. And Liz at Able told me, and I was like, oh shoot, they're pulling the plug. Like, she doesn't want to deal with some startup software issue while she's turning over a guy and getting a new person. And she's like, no, forget it. Like, we're not going to replace him. Like, we're going to promote Emily, and she's going to run that department. Like, Upwell's got a lot of this stuff on lockdown now. So when I heard that, I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is really, really working. Because, I knew that there was a problem, Dan. I knew that this solution was going to be neat. But you never know, like, is this my nerdy vision, or are people actually going to want to pay for this?
So when someone has the confidence to pay you, but then also to run their business on your product, it's got to be like a special moment. When you think about your journey to get to first customer, now I should say that you're much further along and you've raised a good amount of capital, and you're really kind of finding product market fit, or you found product market fit. What advice would you give to a founder who's sort of at the earliest stage, like just getting started? How should they find their first customer?
Well, I would say patience is important. I've started a lot of businesses, and I've wanted to have a SaaS company in logistics for 20 years. I never found a space or an opportunity that was big enough for me to take a swing personally. There was other interesting businesses that I thought, that kid's got a great idea, and I would write a small check, and I would root for him from the sidelines, and I loved being an angel for those reasons. Yeah. But it wasn't until I saw this thing unfold, and then I connected it to a bigger space called order to cash that Gartner was looking after now. And that's when I thought, okay, there's a lot of value creation's been happening over here. How do we take that trend that's already going on, take the network that I already have and the skills and knowledge that I've accumulated, how do we make supper with what we have in the fridge right here? Because now's the time. And I think what I would encourage founders to think about, if you have an idea, validate, validate, validate. Forget the URL, forget the name, don't get a logo, you don't need a website, you don't need business cards,
Yeah.
you don't need a co-founder, you don't need anything until you are supremely confident that there's a problem big enough that's worth solving and a market out there that's willing to pay. And then if you find that, then go like hell. Go like hell on the idea. Figure out what that product needs to look like, figure out what does it need to do, figure out who do you need on the team to build that, how much capital do you need, and then figure out what your name could be, and then figure out what that logo should look like. And but don't do that until you're forced. I think too many people waste their creative juices on arbitrary shit that's not going to move the needle.
Yeah.
And myself included, I've been in that trap. Many times in my 20s and 30s, I've had this great idea, and I would spend more time daydreaming about how successful it could be than taking that first little tiny step.
Going out and talking to prospective customers or
That's
the people that you have to rely on to actually buy the thing. I think that makes a lot of sense. If we pivot a little bit back to our enterprise conversation, you now have experience over 10, 15 years selling to larger enterprises.
Right.
What have you learned that's most helpful in getting in the door to large enterprise that maybe other people don't know?
Well, I think this learning came, and it was the number one takeaway of working for the steamship line.
Yeah.
I worked for this billionaire guy named Rodolphe Sade, whose father founded CMA CGM Group, and this man is an entrepreneur's entrepreneur. He is an amazing.
If that's a customer call, you can take it.
It's a recruiter trying to get me a candidate. So when I was working with Rodolphe, I saw how close he was to his business and how important decisions were to him. And he imparted that on his team. And then they would take that framework into their decisioning and their day-to-day. And so the way that would manifest was, nobody wanted to, the adage, nobody gets fired for buying IBM.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to be the guinea pig in the big organization. And all too often I would see, once I was sitting on that other side of the table, and I kind of could play both sides because I was the startup matchmaker at ZBox, where I'd go source the startup and get them excited to go meet the corporate. Then I get the corporate excited about the startup. Then I would sit in on the call, and I would see these guys have this great conversation. And then, the corporate would say, okay, cool, this is famous. We'll circle up internally. We'll put our heads together, come back to you with 2-3 things that we think we can knock out. Okay?
Yeah.
And then guess what? That meeting never happens.
That never
those
happens.
people go straight from that team's call to another team's call, and they're always on teams. So startups should just invest in teams, buy the license, send the teams update. Don't send them a Google Meet. Don't make it hard on the corporate. Make it easy on the corporate. And you've got to do the follow-up, man. As a startup, you're trying to build momentum. But that guy over on the other side, that person, they're trying to fight inertia. And they've got, this glacier moving at a inch a year, and they're trying to just course correct 1/1000th of a degree. And we're trying to launch our rocket ship, and we're trying to go this way, not this way. So it's just difference of sort of incentives, but the advantage that the startup has is we have the energy, we have the stamina, and we don't die. So if you don't quit on these sales cycles, they happen. But your follow-up has to be impeccable, and you can't give up on these things. So when you say you're going to send something over, you got to send it over. We've struggled with this at Upwell as we've grown fast and onboarded people. And, I'll point it out to our sales folks that, hey, when they say, will you please send the transcript of the call and the recording over so I can share it internally, you got to send that thing over. Why? Because they are fighting like hell internally to get you one more meeting. And it's going to take them 3 meetings internally to get you one more. And you're not going to send this thing over? Are you kidding me?
Right.
That's a recipe for just absolute losing in life.
I love that. And taking it one step further, let's say, you get your pilot, right? You get the enterprise to sign a pilot. Great. Hooray. We have a pilot going.
Yeah.
How do you convert the pilot to a full contract?
Well, first off, it's not a pilot. It's a proof of concept. We start talking about a pilot. Pilot for what? I'm trying to prove one concept. I want to go in with one use case, one desired outcome. We need to quantify that and measure it up front. We need to make sure we have baseline metrics before we go into this proof of concept. Otherwise, we're not proving anything. And then I think one thing that startups fail to do is promote the results. I think they turn on the software, they let it run, and we've been guilty of this too. You let it run, and then that corporate comes back, your sponsor is going, hey, is this working? Is this good? Like,
Right.
what is the impact?
What's the benchmark?
Yeah,
right?
because this, as you know, this corporate sponsor's running 27 different projects. They believe in you. They
Yeah.
want to see this happen. They like you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in their conversations. But at some point, Dan, this person has 2, 3, 4 meetings with you, and they've talked to their supervisor about you in a one-on-one. Like,
Yep.
something better come of it. Otherwise, they can't have another meeting. Otherwise, their boss at the end of the next performance review is like, wait, how many times did you meet with Upwell last quarter? And
Yeah.
wait, what are we doing with them again?
Yeah, and we spent X amount of dollars on that thing, and
Yeah.
what?
Where
Yeah.
did we go with that?
Yeah.
Did that just die? And like, those are the things that kill careers, right? And so you want to find that person who is trying to get ahead, that person in the organization that goes like, you know what? I'm gonna buy Upwell. I'm gonna repurpose 7 of those people, and that's gonna get me a promotion. Like, if you can align the outcomes and the impacts of your business to their career path,
Yes.
you've got a chance.
That's great. Those are 2 like core things to think about. It's sort of, it is a proof of concept. It's like proving one thing well, making sure that people know if it's working. Hopefully it is working. And then aligning with the person who's your champion on the other side, right? Because you want to make them successful. If they're successful, they'll make you successful.
Yeah.
Charley, this is amazing. I really appreciate you taking some time to chat with me today.
It's the least I could do, Dan. Thanks for everything, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Take it easy.